we can just have this be part of the banter, eh?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm
Okay,
totally putty in y'all's hands.
it was my birthday it was like a week and a half ago. And my
Happy birthday.
brother
Happy
sent,
birthday.
thank you. But my brother sent me a gift yesterday. I don't know if you guys can read this, but
Nice.
I'll take the honors. Ever since I was young, I wanted to transform unstructured data into actionable business insights. Love it.
I thought Sean would appreciate that one.
That is so good.
I definitely appreciate it too. I definitely regularly think about and have chats with people going like, hey, did you think that you'd end up exactly here, 20, 30 years ago? Like, no, I wanted to be first baseman for the Yankees, but
Yeah, exactly.
Things played out a little bit differently.
That was my it's crazy. Yeah, that was what I wanted to do all my life. Turn unstructured data into actual business insights.
Of course, we're living the dream.
Okay. Joe, where are you calling from?
Calling from northern New Jersey.
Oh, nice.
About an hour from New York City. Always been in this area. Grew up in Queens, New York. Lived in Brooklyn for a while. And as happens to some people, my wife's career turned us into New Jersey people. And then it stuck. And probably different parts of the country have some version of this. But I grew up thinking, I'd never live in New Jersey. Now here I am, an older man with 2 kids, New Jersey pride, recruiting others to come join me here.
When you say northern New Jersey, are you like in Tenafly?
Pretty close. I used to be even closer to there. I used to be a town called Fort Lee, which is a major commuter town around the city. Tenafly was our neighbor. Now I'm in Morris County, New Jersey. I'm right at the sort of the border between a town called Montville and then a town called Boonton, which I just, as both of you could tell, enjoy saying Boonton. And it just makes me feel like I'm really living in the sticks out here. Yeah,
Boonton is a good one. I'm coming up to Nutley for dinner on Tuesday.
Oh, that's amazing. We definitely are.
2 of my friends have kids, and rather than making them both miss bedtime and come to the city, I'm like, I'll come to you guys.
When we were home searching, picturing putting our kids to bed in some New Jersey town, Nutley was on the list. I'm not surprised to hear that. And whereabouts are you guys calling in from?
I'm in Brooklyn.
Nice.
Are you working from one of the Brooklyn WeWork, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. There's one that's like a 3-minute walk from my apartment, so I figured I'd do that instead of coming to FiDi today.
Yeah, our office is in FiDi, but we'll do some. I'm usually in the office on Fridays, but for random boring reasons, I'm at home today. I live on the Upper East Side in
New York City. Nice. My mom has a place around there. And Sean, I used to be a Brooklyn guy. I lived in downtown, I guess you'd say like Cobble Hill, Borum Hill area. Yeah. And I also lived in Windsor Terrace, but my brother is still right around there in that Cobble Hill area. So I come down there pretty regularly.
I love that. Yeah. So my first place, we were in Carroll Gardens for years, and now we're up in Dumbo.
Nice. Amazing.
Yeah. Small world.
Yeah.
I'm Ibi Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
All right, well, we can jump into it.
Tell us a little bit more, Joe. Tell me a little bit more about your background, because you guys, Sean did his research. He obviously has some background, but tell me a little bit more about you. You seem to have a really impressive sort of resume. Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing now and what led you to go down the good old path of entrepreneurship.
Oh man, I really appreciate that. Yeah, so much as I've had some exciting roles in my career and had some success in the CX space and with growth companies, I always hope that my career story could be like a wee petite inspiration for others out there. Just so much as, guys, I went to college up in Canada. I was an English major. I was like reading books and writing papers my whole college career. I had no idea what to do with that, right? So I thought I might go into journalism. That's what my dad did. I came back home. I had like a starter job or two. I mean, if you caught me at that point in my life, you'd be like, what is this kid going to do with his life? I had a little spark, I was just smart enough to basically, it was like a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. Scored myself an internship at just a tiny startup. So this was the kind of startup where me, the founder and the CTO were kind of sitting in little chairs together in a corner of a floor. of an office, in downtown Manhattan, and the phone would ring and we'd look at each other and take turns picking up the phone. This internship in air quotes involved me ultimately taking like 150 customer calls a day. Just and in those days, the phone system was like literally using my finger to transfer from like line 7 to line 4 to line 3. The calls were booking tickets for just really cool, quirky activities. So, for example, like the Sex and the City bus tour in New York. That was me at like 22 years old, speaking to like 8 straight customers booking that tour. But anyways, I found that I loved it, and I loved, the customer service aspect of it. I had calls in those early days where I felt like I was really impacting someone's hour or day. I literally had a call with a gentleman. I was helping him out with a chocolate tour, and he told me that I restored his faith in humanity. And when I started to chuckle, he kind of interrupted, said, "No, man, I'm actually not kidding. Like, I really needed this today. You really cared. You're a good person. You cared about this little issue in my personal life that I kind of needed that today. Thanks a lot." So as you could
That's
tell,
incredible.
yeah, so that was 20 plus years ago, and you could tell that it stuck with me, right? So I decided I actually love this customer service thing, and I love sort of not just the humanity of it, but turning it into a science. So at that startup, we would track, conversion rate and handle time and and it actually really excited me. So I could look at the end of the week and go, oh, wow, look, I got a little bit better than last week. And what did I do differently? And, I'd kind of make notes to myself, and I'd really, really work these calls. So if I could book somebody for that chocolate tour or that bus tour, I was like, we were selling good stuff. So I thought that they'd have a great time. And it felt good. And it felt good to just get incrementally better and better at something. So I'll start to go a little bit faster through my career story. I stayed at that startup for 10 plus years, which is super rare nowadays. And even for me, a little older man, 20 plus years, it was even rare, for my set of peers. But it was a great situation for me where I could grow with this startup. And I basically turned into that company's story of the front lines, intern rep, turned VP. And then ultimately I was a part of a sort of bizarre but exciting kind of co-CEO's office in that startup. So, you know what, guys, we thought that startup would be the next Google. I'd retire at 28. Long story short, that didn't happen. But it was an amazing run, and it was an amazing start to my career. So basically from there, I had to take a step back and think about, what parts of that journey did I love? Which parts towards the end did I not love as much? And at that point, I rededicated myself to customer service slash what we now think of more as CX, a kind of more strategic version of customer service, where you want it to actually be a competitive differentiator for your organization, a loyalty and growth engine, and so forth. And so I loved that, and I loved the people aspect and management and mentorship. So over the following, 8 to 10 years of my career, which pretty much takes us up to the present, I was head of, whether it's senior director, VP, or whatever, CX, and sometimes broader loyalty and retention strategy at places like AG1 most recently, which was a really exciting time of innovation and growth and expansion for that business. And prior to that, places like Daily Harvest, through again lots of ups and some really instructive downs as well. SeatGeek, where everybody should go to book their tickets for games and concerts and so forth. Massive SeatGeek fan still. Sundays for Dogs, First Dibs, and it was just an absolutely phenomenal run. And so overlapping with that run in my career for the last 2 to 4 years, I found myself kind of I guess branching out a little bit again. Not that just running the CX playbook was boring by any stretch, but I just think a lot of people could relate. You're running that playbook, and I'm in that chapter of career for 10 plus years, and something started to shift a little bit. So overlapping with that time period, I started to really deep dive into tech providers, AI providers in the CX space. Got into some new direct to consumer industries as well, and basically started doing advising for companies, advising for equity. I tried my hands at modest level of angel investing, in a couple of companies. When my time at AG1 ended, I did a lot of soul searching. I've gotten some needling in my community. I guess it was like my eat, pray, love, kind of moment in life.
Love that.
Did some traveling, really thought about things and decided, all right, I don't know what it's going to look like exactly, but I'm ready for a more entrepreneurial kind of chapter to my career, solopreneur, what have you. Just ready to kind of have that agency, be my own boss, and add what really attracted me was to add as much diversity to every day as possible. That kind
Oh
of
yeah.
takes us up to the presence and the founder of my egotistically named CX Joe Advisory.
No, I love it. Cram question. Okay, I always before we dive into this, I always assumed AG1 was like a super new company. Is that like just a
Mhm.
me thing? I like for some weird reason, like First Dibs I've known has been around for a while. Obviously, like Sundays for Dogs, they have the same investors as we do.
Oh,
So I've
nice.
known
Okay.
about them for a while, but
Great
AG1 seems
company.
to have like really
Well,
ramped
they
up in the last.
rebranded.
Yep. Yeah,
Oh, what
it's
were
a
they
really
before?
interesting story though, and it definitely overlaps. Like listening to that question takes me all the way back to when I got a first recruiter email from AG1 or their recruiter or whomever. I had a similar. I'm like, I've heard of these guys, maybe, but it feels like they're everywhere suddenly. You know, it just was an interesting experience. But their history, I won't remember the founding year exactly, but maybe like 12 to 15 years ago, a guy named Chris founded the company. Just super scrappy, entrepreneurial, and he settled on the name Athletic Greens. And long story short, the company, you know, grew, was doing fine, kind of had its, you know, fits and starts, but overall was doing well and growing at a more normal linear rate. And then around the same couple year period, you know, the product started to take off. It kept getting refined. It was really catching on word of mouth. Then the company linked up with Kat Cole, who's the current CEO and just has, I mean, you know, working at her company for a year was a privilege. She's an incredible powerhouse leader and, you know, thought leader and influencer and so forth. She links up with the company. It rebrands as AG1. And then we head into the pandemic and, you know, different macro forces at play there. And the whole thing just kind of took off. And then they really leaned in a way. I've
Got
been
it.
very lucky in my career, you know, being the CX guy, but working alongside some really innovative powerhouse marketing. And as the career went on, influencer teams, you know, SeatGeek is another great example, Daily Harvest. But AG1 just crushed that game, you know, so as all these different forces were kind of converging, eventually there was a nice fundraise and it just led to this kind of explosion in growth, and also explosion in kind of brand awareness slash everyone listening to this
Yeah,
probably gets hit up with AG1 ads and, you know, every
always every
podcast
podcast.
and YouTube video, unless it's SeatGeek.
Yeah. So I have one more question actually.
Yeah.
How is it possible that you got so many? Because like, all right, I don't want to be mean, but and
Be mean, be direct.
for every like, I feel like for every one great consumer brand that seems to like find not only PMF but like brand market fit, right? Like, there's so much brand cachet. Like a great example is like we
Yeah.
work with Coterie, like they're one of our customers,
Yeah.
and
Great, Graham.
I mean, they are a great brand, but at the real baseline of it, like I know why they do well, but there are like a lot of competitors in that space, and how is it possible that you chose so many hitters that like went on to do like super well, right? And like and we can sort of like you know, I'm being a little bit picky here, where I'm sure that like some of them are doing better than others,
Hmm.
um, but but what do you think it is that makes these companies do well? And honestly, I'll throw SeatGeek in there too,
Yeah.
because the ticketing space is also so competitive. Like, there's
Hmm.
obviously big ones that I know of, but every single time I Google like so insert name of artist plus ticket, like I get like a bunch of other platforms that I've never heard of. So that space must also be pretty crowded. How in the heckity heck did you pick so many winners? Like, what is it? What do you think it is that makes these consumer brands winners? Oh, is it a marketing thing? Is it a brand thing? Is it a
Land the
customer
plane,
experience thing? What
Ibby.
is it?
Ask the question.
Hey,
Oh, so
listen,
you're direct with each other too. I get it. I like this
listen,
podcast.
listen. I monologue, son. No, yeah,
That
that's my
was like
question.
5 minutes for you to say, how did you land at 6 blue chip brands?
Hey, I want to know. I want the listeners to know how much I know about.
Okay. I want to hear Joe's answer.
So I love the question. It's fun and, you know, flattering in ways. So thank you. Yeah, it's been a blast landing at those companies. Now I will say, guys, there's so many different ways of evaluating winners, and just in humility, or kind of share something I find interesting. Right. So as far as sort of brand cachet, awareness of these brands, you know, et cetera, in the circles I run in, yeah, it's like kind of a fun resume or LinkedIn to go around with and tell my war stories from these companies and the founders and so forth. The flip side is sometimes I chat with somebody and I haven't heard of anywhere they worked, and we get to chatting and they're like, yeah, 4 successful exits in there, blah, blah, blah. Heading to my summer house now. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So you kind of, you quietly picked winners in a different way, that I did. But it has been a great ride, and I appreciate the question. So I think there's like two sides to it. There's one, how the heck did, me as this dumb, like English major call center kid end up at the companies? And that's one question. Maybe we'll get into that later. But for now, I'll focus on what actually has these companies stand apart. So it's going to be very on brand and almost corny, cliche, predictable of me to say. But I'm going to go ahead and say that these companies are wildly customer centric. You could say customer obsessed. Some people don't love that terminology, but it's kind of in that direction. Let's just go with customer centric. Like, they're wildly customer centric. Um, and I think a common experience I had starting at every company you just named is I would have some sense of the company. I'd do my research. I'd interview. I'd be thrilled to, land the offer and the gig. And I'd come in on the first day thinking some of what I see from the outside is going to be phony, right? Like, some of it's going to be exaggerated. I could talk about any of these. I'll talk about Daily Harvest. I joined the business at a time there was good buzz around Daily Harvest, really high growth rate. The founder, Rachel Jory, was kind of everywhere. It was an exciting time to join the business. And I thought to myself, some of what I'm seeing in these ads on social or wherever, they're going to be a little bit hyped up, right? Like, I'm going to join and nobody actually cares where the strawberry came from. Then I joined the business and I'm like 4 weeks into onboarding and I'm like, holy F, everybody cares where that strawberry came from, like 100 times more than people from the outside would ever imagine. It's like, you know, C-level meetings and 80 pages of and a 8-month process to vet where that damn strawberry is coming from, so that when the customer gets it, they pop it in the blender, they take a first sip, they're like, wow, actually, I mean, this is an expensive smoothie, but not only was it really convenient, the branding is great, it actually tastes really great. Like, why does this frozen strawberry taste so great? Well, because it came from the best farm and wherever, and the team put a year into that process. So I think you could take that anecdote and kind of copy paste it across my whole experience. It's the same thing at AG1. AG1 is a brand that is wildly popular, but is a bit polarizing. And so you'll find people, and certainly I did in my year there, who will say like, oh my God, what is it? Like 75 plus ingredients. You guys don't even know what's going into the thing. Actually, not the case. Like, there's people wildly smarter than me, PhDs, scientists, people who live in labs that AG1, owns and employs, who are diving into that 76th ingredient and ensuring the quality of it. So you could just copy paste that across everywhere I've worked. Now, all these places also, I think, combines that customer centricity, strong founder, CEO visions, great recruiting. And they did combine it with just really powerhouse marketing teams. And that's been another privilege in my career. If I have creativity, it's in the way that people with no creativity, like, truly have a little creativity if you get into it. But I'm sort of just humbly, like, not a very creative person in a lot of ways. But when I'm sitting in the room and, like, there's a guy named Ian who was at SeatGeek at the same time as me, he has his own agency now. Like, that guy's kind of one of the parents of, like, influencer marketing as we see it today. I worked alongside him. I get to these other places, the marketing team at AG1, I'd sit in executive leadership offsite and watch like a 15-minute video of the creative that was going to be coming out the next quarter or two. And guys, I was just like a fan. I just wanted, put my feet up, like, have some popcorn and just think like, how did I get in this room? Because the people producing this creative are literally like the best in the world at it. So, these places, again, in summary, super customer centric, great teams, great founders, CEO visions, and so forth. Also really spending money and spending the time to bring in powerhouse creatives, influencer marketers, etc.
And so when you, in your experience at these companies who are, you described incredible product and relentless focus on what goes into that product. You talked about great marketing. You talked about being obsessed with the customer. As the CX lead or CX voice, how much of your role was spent like kind of advocating on behalf of customers versus how much was that sort of already part of the core culture? You were almost like the middleman facilitator versus kind of like the champion being like, wait, we should consider, how this is going to impact you or what they're going to think about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I love that. It did vary a little bit stop by stop. I mean, and how would it not, right? It was like enough companies where that varied a little bit stop by stop. I would say as a trend in my career, definitely I was joining companies that already got it, so to speak, from the standpoint of being customer centric, from the standpoint of your CX team and organization, not just being a cost center, kind of a glorified FAQ center, but like, wait a second, this like every single conversation, whether it's 100,000, a million or more, that customers are having with my team in an org, like on a given year, every single one of those how priceless is that, right? Like we're sending out all these marketing communications, we're speculating on like what, like how things will hit the market ad nauseum, and I'm in those meetings too. But yeah, I am oftentimes the voice in the room. If it ever gets forgotten, just kind of raising my hand and saying, hey, like my team, like, if you think about it a certain way, like we have tens of thousands of conversations with our customers, like scheduled for next week. Like, how could we be helpful here? And being an ambassador for the brand in, gathering information and data and insights and, seeing what's sticking in the market, seeing what our customers want, what are their concerns, what are their loves. So I think my answer to your question is I did try to choose wisely. And in some ways, I probably had a little bit of a privileged CX leader career in that sense. I am typically with intention trying to land at places like 10 minutes spent with Rachel at Daily Harvest. And I was like, if I get an offer, I'm taking it. I didn't like the numbers, all of that, but just looking into her eye, and she was selling me on how customer centricity was going to drive her business. I mean, she came from a Four Seasons hospitality background. So basically the pitch was like, can you figure out how to provide a Four Seasons experience to all of our hundreds of thousands or millions of customers? I was like, sold, when do I start? So I did choose with intention in that way. I didn't have to do that much convincing, but if you think about sort of the next level of the job and what got me really fired up over these last like 5-10 years was, okay, if everyone's kind of roughly on the same page, now we're investing into support or CX. We see the light there, but there's still a lot of greenfield. There's like, you could still go to infinity of how are we now going to leverage that powerhouse of a function. So, okay, we've invested, Daily Harvest, our CSAT was like 97% in interactions because I was so supported in the way that I ran that department. But then the fun part, the extra fun part was like, how are we going to leverage this asset now? Right. So we're having conversations with our customers. They're thrilled. We have the best team, the best toolkit, the best everything. Let's not stop with just 97% CSAT on inbound support conversations. Nothing to sneeze at. I love that part of the job, but let's not stop there. Let's figure out how this function's actually going to be, again, a competitive differentiator and a growth engine for the business. So to circle back to your question, eventually, that would be the part where sometimes I did still have to advocate, even in the most customer centric organizations, was kind of raising my hand and saying, hey, maybe my team or my function or those parts of the journey that we touch could help with that org level, KPI or initiative, or maybe that part of the customer journey where we don't exist today, we actually should.
That's really cool. And so,
Nice.
so at CX Joe, you mentioned a couple times the idea of playbook, right? That was a specific word you used of,
Yeah.
not that you got bored with it, not that it was tired or anything like that. Like you mentioned that you have a playbook. How much, most of the teams that you were on were some form of e-commerce for a very sort of like specific product, right? Like it wasn't a Macy's where you sell a little bit of everything. It was like, we have like, some sort of food thing or some sort of very specific dog food, whatever. How much does that playbook sort of change if you get outside of kind of that type of company, do you think? And then the other question, would be remiss if I didn't ask, like, what role is like AI and tech playing when you think about this playbook?
Amazing. I love all of it. This is like my whole world. So part one of the question. So guys, I'm like about 6 months, like 4 to 6 months into this more, entrepreneur journey and having CX Joe. And so there are certain aspects I'm still learning, and I don't say that with embarrassment. It's like that's kind of the fun, right? I'm sure this is going to continue for a long time. So one of the dynamics I've been kind of playing with myself is how extensible, like how widely, relatable, relevant, extensible is this playbook or this set of knowledge that I have. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what I figured out. But basically, not to bury the lead, I think any organization that is customer facing that is customer centric and which really wants to invest in retention and loyalty with their customers, and believes that customer experience in a broad sense should be a part of that kind of retention loyalty journey. I think I could be really helpful for those companies. So I'll give you some really quick hit examples. One of the first engagements I had, and I'm so new at this, I don't even know who wants their brand name mentioned, so I won't do it, on this particular call, but people could hit me up. We could talk more. But there was an incredible brand I had the privilege of working with. They're basically your go-to for custom hair care and skincare. Amazing product, amazing, team, growth, everything. But I give them all the credit in the world. They reached out to me, saying, hey, like, yeah, we're doing great, and we're having we want to elevate our customer experience to 11 out of 10 because we are now fully sold that that's going to be our growth engine, for the next level of growth and the next level. Like, let's focus on retention and loyalty and customer experience. And could you maybe help with that? I was like, yeah. I mean, that was like hand in glove fit. They're D2C. They have a subscription model, et cetera. I was like, obviously, this is like what I'm made for. Then there's more of a stretch I'll mention, which I'm currently working with. It's a solar energy company. When I first got the intro, I was like, like shrug of the shoulders, right? Like, are they going to care about what I have to say? Is also will this be interesting? Had an initial call with the president. Totally relevant, guys. It was awesome. Like, hey, I don't know anything about solar panels. He's like, that's okay. We'll send you the materials. You'll get learned up, quickly. But again, they're a company that actually looks at one of their differentiators already to be customer experience, the way that they price their product. And this leader was thinking, hey, if we could increase our attention a tick or two and also increase the performance of our referral program, that could be the next catalyst for the business. So as I told my career story, he's like, yeah, great. Like, when can you start? But I'll give you one more quick hit example where I invested a decent amount of time, got to know two operators really well, like an amazing family business. And it ended up being at the end, we kind of, broke up very warmly because their business wasn't really focused on an end direct consumer. It was more of like a wholesaling sort of business. There were just deep kind of B2B aspects of the strategy of their sales and retention, and also the tools that they needed, where we just ultimately had to acknowledge, like, hey, this is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not adding wild value. And if I'm not adding wild value, like, let's just, let's just kind of like, shake hands and part ways. If they ever jump to more of a consumer focus, hit me up, that sort of thing. So I think it's pretty widely extensible, but again, I'll always, I'll help a new client, whether it be the founder, CEO, or some other business leader. I'll kind of help them to think through whether I'll be able to actually help them. And I think humbly, as a newer advisor or consultant, but I have been kind of dabbling with it for years now, that is one requirement of an advisor or a consultant. Don't just pitch yourself and your 10 out of 10 utility to everybody. Actually have a two-way conversation and help that, operator, decision maker think through just kind of objectively and factually and analytically, like, how great is the fit here? And to jump to the second part of your question, maybe I'll try to give a brief answer, which, as you could tell, is hard for me because we could like unpack it further. But oh man, technology and specifically AI is definitely, I don't know, right at the top or the forefront of the strategy in CX going forward. And I think the really exciting part that we could unpack more is that humans and humanity are also still at the top, at the forefront of the future of CX. And so kind of leading into this seeming contradiction, which is not a contradiction at all. I think the game going forward is how to strike that perfect balance between AI, broader, tech toolkit, and humans. And AI is offering us possibilities in the CX space that we just wouldn't have had 20 years ago. So again, I'll sound a little obvious or cliche here, but we needn't run away from that or fear it's going to take our jobs and all of these things. I think sort of the modern CX leader really needs to lean in, become an expert, and figure out how that AI, tool or partner, they're not going to be a thorn in your side, nor are they going to be like, well, they're that bucket over there of volume. We're over here at the humans. So like, obviously not. How are you going to use that AI toolkit to actually achieve objectives and outcomes that wouldn't have been possible, 10 or 20 years ago?
Very interesting. Yeah, it's something that, Ibby and our other founder, Tom, talk about quite a bit, is that, AI at the end of the day is a tool, is an enabler, but it can only be as effective as the human being who's setting it up and who's orchestrating it, who's building with it.
Yep.
And so it's not hey, we don't need the humans. The question still, regardless of what tech stack you're using, it still comes down to, do I have the right people? Are they empathetic? Do they Do they kind of quote unquote get it? And so I guess that leads me, like, when you think about building the right CX team and the humans behind it specifically, not the tech side, not kind of like the flow, but just like the right human beings. How much does it matter that a CX agent or support agent is kind of part of that core ICP, or kind of like a part of the customer base, right? Like I think of like an app like a Strava or an All Trails, or even like at at whether it's Klaviyo or Zen, it could be a SaaS platform. Like, how important is it to just be like, hey, I'm an empathetic person who's going to like work my butt off, versus how much is to be like, hey, I'm a runner too. I get what you're probably thinking.
Yeah, it's another such a great question, because again, it's another one where I think it's important not to jump to an extreme view on one side or the other. And I've had that experience in my career. I started out probably in the mindset that it was 10 out of 10, sort of a necessity. Then I had an experience in my career. So then I kind of flipped, or I met leaders who said, no, that's not important at all. Like, we don't care about that at all. We're just a bunch of business people who are here, to grow this company into a rocket ship. I'll use the example of First Dibs, and again, you guys kind of encouraged, honesty and directness, and I'm that's my belief system too. So First Dibs was a privilege of a place for me to work at. They took a chance on me when I was younger in my career. I mean, shoot, I caught up with the hiring manager and a mentor of mine in recent months, just like salt of the earth people who will support you through anything. I realized eventually that was an example for me. I have this very corny belief system, and it carries to my management of other people as well, where you should, hop out of bed in the morning. We used to say head to the office. Now we might be in the office, we might be working from home, but you should hop out of bed, think about your work day, and just, feel jazzed, like feel really lucky. Like, pinch me. How did I get here? How did I end up in this seat? I'm so lucky to be here. And I had already been preaching that, for years in my career and years since. Anyone I've ever managed to work with was like, yeah, I've heard that one before. Um, and part of my decision to leave First Dibs, I got there, it was such a world class place to work. I thought, I'm going to be here 5-10 years, and I came to the realization, guys, that I'm not necessarily feeling that 10 out of 10 pinch me. I'm so lucky to be here. And it was really just back to the product, to the industry. This was a luxury marketplace, selling, I mean, honestly, some of the most beautiful things or objects in the world. And that's a fair descriptor. Sometimes the customer would be someone who maybe was furnishing their third or fourth home. And they really want to deep dive into this antique or this piece of art. Is it better? Is this one better? Is that one better? I realized at the end of the day, this was not a mission that was making me jump out of bed. And I came to the realization that, there was some other CX leader out there who is going to feel more that way than I did in my current seat. Gosh, like maybe time to move. And I remember when I did make that move, and again, like, successful time, still friends with everybody there I worked with. But I thought to myself, like, these guys would have been better served if they had someone come in at that moment in time who stayed for 3 or 5 or 7 years and really want to be a part of that mission long term. And so that was sort of an introspective moment for me, both of their decision and my decision, and thinking, I think it kind of does matter. I think it does matter. So I think there's a middle ground here, like with everywhere. Definitely, again, we started talking about how you just need athletes, like people who have, sort of the general skill set, the hustle, the mindset. I mean, absolutely. And at different levels of the team, that could work beautifully well, right? Like, just stick that person on any product, they'll do a great job. But I think especially as you get into leadership levels of a business, I do actually think that it matters. And I think you want most people in the room to be really, really passionate about that product and about that industry. I do think that it leads to an even deeper, more nuanced level of understanding, as you mentioned, in the positioning of your question, it kind of leads to that deeper, more nuanced level of understanding of who the core customer is and how to serve them. So definitely at AG1, that was the case, and I could speak to that more. And I think you could have, like, kind of interspersed into the room some people who are there more just as like athlete leaders or see a business opportunity. I think you want the majority of the room to kind of bleed that product and that industry. And I do think that it actually shines through. And I think that it matters. And again, if you think about from a recruiting, a leadership standpoint, and you care about longevity, right? To have to replace leaders every year or two is expensive and a hassle, and we lose so much momentum. So I would definitely advise people, if you think about sort of the the relationship, right? The correlation between the passion that a new leader is bringing to your product or your industry and their sort of predictive longevity in role. These are so correlated. So don't ignore that dynamic of that correlation.
Nice. That's super interesting. All right. So to finish off, let me sort of set the scene here. You are, speaking to a conference of people that are trying to, they're starting a company, they want to enter a space, maybe the space is crowded, and you're trying to evangelize being, customer centric. Like, what are tangible takeaways that some of these people can have to and sort of implement from day one? Right? Because
Yeah.
like it's very, very easy to put it on the back burner and just say, listen, like I'll care about this later. What does that look like?
Okay, that's a great question. I don't have a pre-prepared answer, but I'm gonna give you three quick hits. So my themes are gonna be talent, tiebreaker, and tech. I'm feeling very lucky in this moment. They all start with a T, so I sound very smart and slick. The first three thoughts that pop to mind. So one, talent is do invest in talent in the CX part of your organization early. Again, this will be very predictable kind of evangelism for me, but it's something that's based on 20 plus years of facts and experience and seeing what works. Don't think about the support part of your organization only 3 or 5 years in, or oh my God, things are breaking at the seams, because I never really thought of that part of the business as too important. Now you're investing. Yeah, that could work. I've been brought into a couple of those, but if I think a lot of the businesses you see who just take off from the jump, they're like a year or two and they're like, oh my God, how did they get there? If you speak to those founders, oftentimes they really were customer centric from day one. And part of what that could include is bringing in great talent, in that part of your organization from the start. And maybe you don't need an SVP of CX, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not saying that part is always true, but even if you're just bringing in, let's say, a manager, like a player coach kind of team lead or manager, bring somebody in, give that recruitment process, that interview process, the same respect that you're giving, bring in a founding marketing leader, because that founding CX leader could really take you places and drive a big impact. When I say tiebreaker, what I mean is every business, everywhere I've worked, all of these sort of tiebreaker, sort of like jump ball moments come up where you're just not sure what to do from the standpoint of customer experience, accommodating customers, dealing with either an error that your own company made, which might be simpler, or errors or misfortune that feels completely out of your hands. I remember at SeatGeek there was a story where a bunch of the Super Bowl tickets that they had sold really early on were bad tickets. They didn't work. And we need a whole other episode to get into the complexities of this secondary ticketing market. It's a surprisingly complex and messy space. So SeatGeek, massively customer centric, not trying to trick anybody, sold a bunch of Super Bowl tickets that didn't work. Those guys were like on other ticketing websites, competitive ticketing websites, spending like 5x to buy people replacement Super Bowl tickets. The company took such a hit. It was like on that year's report to the board, they took a massive hit. But that's the kind of thing that they did early days to drive customer centricity and make sure that those, fans of the Super Bowl went out and told 1,000 people, like, only use SeatGeek instead of the debacle that could have been. And I could tell stories from everywhere that I've been. So you reach these moments, you're like, oh, this is really a tough call. You're kind of debating the numbers, the metrics. You're like, that's going to be an 80K hit. Are we going to see the ROI on that? And I think that the best founders, the best brands out there, at some point, you almost like call a timeout in the room. You're like, all right, let's stop running the ROI analyses. Like, that just feels right for our customer. And the tie goes to the customer. And the last thing, and definitely one of my passions with CX Joe, is really, really embrace bringing on the best tech providers, the best, fashion your team like with a killer toolkit from day one. And this is something I do get pretty passionate about or a little bit fiery about, because there could be one philosophy of like, oh, budget's tight this year. Like, oh my God, Joe, your CX team has 3 tools already, and now you're saying you want a 4th. Like, that's going to tie you with the marketing team, and like that seems a little bit weird. And like, oh, like, can't we just figure this out and build it ourselves? Hard to generalize, but generally speaking, I'm going to push back against perspectives like that. I love actually, like, I get really jazzed about optimizing toolkit. I'll give you like another SeatGeek anecdote. We worked with a company that then was called Stella Connect. They're now under the Medallia umbrella, but like the Stella crew in those days, I still catch up with. There's people from the SeatGeek team who now work, on that product. I could give 100 other examples from my career, but It was one where you could have easily looked at this product and gone like, I think we could send out a customer service CSAT survey for way cheaper. But we thought like, yeah, but on the flip side, these guys are like literally just dedicating their entire week and life to like thinking about how to do that perfectly and how to actually drive, team engagement and customer loyalty in that moment or in that moment of a simple survey. I don't know, maybe we should listen to. Maybe there's something there and it worked out great. I have so many examples like that across my career. So with intention, like part of my CX Joe advisory is absolutely toolkit optimization. Absolutely working with brands. And it could be I've advised, stealthy startups or companies in the beginning of their journey. And if that founder, CEO, or head of brand is wise enough to say like, hey, how is our toolkit looking though? Like, is this the right AI partner? Or like, we're kind of seeing some problems with their CRM. Should we like look at that now or is it too early? I'm like, no, it's not too early. Optimize your toolkit. And remember, guys, if you're going to tell your team, you're going to push your team to world class and tell them, I want 11 out of 10 performance and 11 out of 10 effort from you, then you need to equip those people with 11 out of 10 world class toolkit. So if you're pushing on the one, you're driving in one way and not equipping them with those tools, that's, a brand of management that I don't agree with and wouldn't advise on.
I love that.
Awesome. I love these
Incredible.
questions. Do we have like 5 more hours? Because I'm just getting going here.
Keep going. No, we'll just have you on again.
I do have one
we're probably
question
coming up
about,
on it.
about
Go
the
for it,
website.
Cool.
Your website says most services and access come at no cost to you. I need to know more. I demand to know more.
Oh my God, I just made a note. Need to edit that website later today. No. So look, the copy and like the version of the website will evolve with the business. But here's what I meant by that and what I absolutely stand by. It actually gets back to this toolkit optimization. So basically, there's 2 paths that a brand could go down with me. And in many cases, I would recommend the free to brands model. And that's what I'm alluding to on the website. So I'll cover the other path first. The other path is what I think of as more traditional consulting work. And it's great. It's helping me to pay the bills right now. There's a lot of value in that. And so that would look like something like a deep dive audit and diagnostic of a company's CX operation, their broader customer journey, maybe their retention strategy, maybe their referral program strategy, et cetera. And I could come in and spend, dozens of hours in deep dive, like stakeholder interviews and shadowing and immersing myself in documentation. And I could come up with an action plan at the end and then help to implement it. So I think that could be exciting for a lot of businesses out there. That one I have to charge for. And it's a pretty deep dive kind of traditional engagement. But when I launched the advisory, this vision that I had that still really fires me up, actually, the moment, again, it's very corny, but like the moments traveling abroad and taking a walk around some body of water where I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, is when I thought to myself, hey, this is actually sort of an interesting win-win-win sort of structure I might have just thought of. It's not that innovative, but it was like a slight tweak that made me really excited. So I already had relationships with several of the best technology partners that I had worked with throughout my career. Like in my mind, the superstar team. Okay, this one was okay, but that one really drove the business. This one talked a lot of game in the sales process, and then was so after. This one, like we barely said yes to, and then took such amazing care of us. So casually, I was telling all of my friends, like, you need to work with, vendors X, Y, and Z. And that relates to AI toolkit, that relates to broader tech toolkit, and it relates to what we call BPO staffing, basically, outsource customer support staffing in the space. And so I realized, maybe like a founder or two on that side of the business had already approached me along my career journey saying, hey, by the way, like if you send us a great brand, we'll pay you for that. Like we should, like that's your recommendation, your brand, whatever. So we'll pay you for that referral. So walking around one day over the summer, I thought to myself, well, what if I went out and actually cultivated relationships and partnerships with an even broader set of partners, across technology, across staffing. I'm going to have time on my hands to really deep dive even more into AI applications and CX, into, where the best BPO staffing, quality, the value for your money, et cetera, et cetera. So if I deep dive there, I build up my partner network, then maybe those folks will be the ones paying my mortgage and paying the bills. Now, this allows me to go out to brands to make an audacious statement like that on a website and say, hey, you could work with me, you could work with CX Joe, and there's no charge to you. All I ask is that, if we're going to deep dive on some part of your toolkit that you want to optimize. So basically, like what I ask for companies if they want to work with me for free is at some point we should talk about that. That's going to be that's going to be how I could pay the mortgage. We could talk about other stuff. We could talk about high level strategy and recruiting and all the things that I love talking about. I do ask at some point, is there something in your toolkit or your staffing that you're looking to optimize? And if so, listen with open ears and an open mind and heart to my recommendations. Maybe let me make an intro or two, and that's it. And let's see what happens. And so I learned that there's this concept already existing in the space of sort of a trusted advisor, quote unquote. And so that part of my advisory is what you could think of broadly in the space as a sort of trusted advisor. And so if you're looking to do these 5 things with your CX team, and again, it could be a broad set of strategic initiatives, but 1 or 2 of those does include a tech or a staffing optimization, you could pull me in. And I think the win-win-win is that brand could get a ton of value. It's sort of like having me. Like having the former VP of happiness at an AG1 or a Daily Harvest or SeatGeek or wherever, kind of on your team now. You have access to me, all the time. Hit me up, like Slack me or call me when something interesting comes up. And I'll also match you up with the best tech and staffing providers. So I think there's really nice value there. For the price tag of 0 is like kind of a good deal, I think. There's value to the partners and the vendors because they know that I try to roll with good people. And so I'm bringing them sales opportunities that are really cool, customer-centric brands, places where maybe they have trouble breaking through to and just cold, LinkedIn outreaches and so forth. So they really like, they appreciate the intros and they're willing to pay for them. And then for me, I win because I get to, be my own boss and flex my entrepreneurial muscles and, hopefully pay the mortgage while still getting to pick up my kids from school and, live a great life. So that was kind of the little spark I had of like, wait, that could actually be a compelling win-win-win. So that free, as much as I joked a bit a few minutes ago, that most services come at no charge to the brand is actually something that I hope is a part of my advisory super long-term. And that's kind of the vision and the win-win-win structure that I have behind it. And thank you for asking.
That's fascinating.
That's really, really cool. Joe, it was super, super great having you on. I think, amazing. Unfortunately, as Sean said earlier, I have to land the plane. I think it'd be really fun to see you in the city if you come in. Just let us know next time you're here.
We'd love that.
Get to dinner. Before we really end, though, can you tell our listeners where to find you, where to find CX Joe, how to schedule a chat with you if they want to bring you on board?
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So I'm big on LinkedIn. And again, that could be another episode I've talked to a lot of my CX homies about is like really invest into LinkedIn. I love the community on there. So definitely find me on LinkedIn, either Joe Gilgoff, you could find me, or CX Joe. I do have that brand page now. My website is cxjoe.com. There's more information on there, including the audacious, advertisement that you go work with me for free. And there's a contact page on there, so you could hit me up that way. And beyond that, I do actually want to mention that a really good friend of mine, Linda Harvey, who's becoming quite the influencer and internet star online and really leaning into management advice for people coming up in their career. She and I are actually dabbling with the idea of launching our own little podcast. So I hope you guys don't mind, but the working title is In the Business of Humans. And we really, really want to lean into, everything that I covered today. And again, that would be maybe where I stretch out and it's like my geek out areas. And Linda has a lot of overlap, but really like her geek out areas and where she's gaining a following is guiding people who are earlier in their career how to actually rise the ranks. And so then for us as leaders, how to look at the numbers and the data for sure, but never to lose the humanity as well. So those are going to be the kind of topics that we're going to explore in our little podcast. And I don't know, maybe one of you could come on our podcast one day.
Love it.
Love that.
No, I'm fully into the idea of just sort of like this, like all this content being out there. I think that honestly, like if I gave any advice to people that were starting companies, it wouldn't necessarily be 100% to start a podcast, but I just think that there's so much value in just recording the conversations you have with like friends and people that you respect, people that you like, and putting them on the internet, right? Like people will listen, people will engage. I went onto a few podcasts like a few weeks ago, and I actually put my personal cell number on a few of them that I didn't think were going to get that many listens, but I get like a trickle of texts where people are like, hey, like it was really interesting to hear you talk about X, Y, and Z. I think that the reason for this is I don't know if people listen all the way to the end on, especially when I'm talking, but it's, tend to monologue, and it's just really interesting. I think it's really interesting. It's it's something that's really easy to do. Just get on Zoom, stick a camera up, and then, do a little bit of editing and put it up there and see what happens. See what
Yeah, I
happens.
totally
Like, you
agree with
can,
you.
yeah, it's awesome. But again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And we're gonna have to do a second episode.
Thank you both for having me. This has really been a blast. It's just made me, really excited about the space. Not only everything that I'm up to, but to be on a podcast like this and you guys kind of promoting the customer experience and these perspectives is awesome. So I really thank you too, and it's been a privilege.
Thanks so much. All right.
Thank you.